Happy Monday, folks. Welcome to another edition of College Football Time with Avery Miguel. I'm Miguel. This is my partner Avery. Avery, happy Monday and interesting weekend. Interesting weekend. We finally got ourselves the Heisman Trophy winner.
Absolutely. I I I I think it was close. I think it was close. Once the finalists were announced, it was either going to be Travis Hunter or Aston Genty. And the fact that Travis Hunter got it, I think was fantastic for college football. We've said all year college football has been exciting. The changes to college football, we've seen players kind of I don't want to use the word show out, but they've come into themselves, a lot of confidence, a lot of, hey, we can do this, not just from what school they're representing, but also where they're from and also the story behind it. And Travis Hunter won by 214 points, the smallest margin ever. And I think that says a lot about the players that were finalists. You had Cam Ward, who did a fantastic job at Miami this season, and the night before, for college football awards in general. Cam Ward won as quarterback of the year. Aston Gentry also won for running back of the year. So winning those awards leading up to the Heisman Saturday night, I mean, it was great. And I think it's a great thing for football. Travis Hunter, even though he's a two-way player, winning the Heisman, especially on a more defensive side, like I said, he gave flashes of Desmond Howard, so Travis Hunter winning, I think, is great for him. I think it's great for the program of Colorado, and of course, his head coach Deion Sanders couldn't be more proud. Couldn't be more proud.
It's not easy to play both offense and defense in football, and he did it exceptionally well this season. He put on a show this season. I believe that many people did not want to see him succeed, nor Shador Sanders succeed. Why? Because of Deion Sanders, because of him. There was even some people that didn't even put Travis Hunter in their top three for the Heisman Trophy, which is crazy. But you had a lot of people out there that really just didn't want Colorado to succeed in nothing, absolutely nothing. So, and I believe that Travis Hunter needed a coach like Deion Sanders to take him to that other level because and this is um there's nothing wrong about it. I feel like there are certain players that they need a certain coach to lift their confidence, that they take their game to another level, take them to heights that they never even imagined. There's some players that they're naturally they could do it with any coach, but there's some players that they just need that coach that will give them that push, that voice of reason. And I think, especially if you saw the way they embraced each other when his name got called up, that was real. Those were real romance years right there. That goes to show he had his fiance there, he had his family there, but it was a whole different level of emotion when he got to Prime. That was unbelievable. And I like the fact that he took his time to go up stage. He embraced everyone. The speech, I felt the speech was emotional. It was inspiring, thanking everyone along the way. But the highlight of that award ceremony, in my opinion, was that hug and crying on Deion Sanders' shoulders.
I agree with you. It was, and one thing I think, especially for me personally, I think Travis Hunter winning the Heisman, he was not even a finalist for the Jim Thorpe Award, which is the best defensive player of the year, an award that Deion Sanders won. And it was interesting because there were some comments saying that the reason he was not voted in was because, just like you said, they don't like Coach Sanders. And I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to have some coaches that are not well liked, but they are going to produce some very great players. And it's not just football. I had this conversation with a colleague in terms of college basketball. Bobby Knight came to mind in our conversation when we were talking about it. A lot of people didn't like Bobby Knight, but Bobby Knight produced a lot of good college basketball players. And the fact that you are punishing young men because you have a vendetta or you just don't, like a coach, like I've said before, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest Deion Sanders fan, but I like what he's doing at Colorado. He is bringing that fan base some excitement. He is bringing the program some excitement. They have a bowl game just in their second year of him being there. He brought players in. He is bringing more players in. That program is getting a shot in the arm that it most desperately needed, from the past, let's say, 30 plus years. And we've seen that recently. And it happens with sometimes a head coaching change, that excitement, that, you know, that that gusto that a program needs to get it rolling. So the fact that you have people don't, I'm not gonna vote for that player because they play for, no, that's, you're doing a travesty of injustice to these young men that are giving their all, not just, talking about those at Colorado, but any player at any college football program. And it's discouraging that you have people that will do that. These young men have done their very best to compete at the highest level. If that future is professional football, why are you downplaying it because you don't like their coach? And I think it's something that's very discouraging. I think it's terrible for college football if that's the way it goes, because like all year, we have been excited about these football programs. So when you have great head coaches that are producing great players that are then lifting up a program itself, it's great. We've talked about it. Northern Illinois coach, of course, we're talking about Coach Sanders for Colorado. Arizona State, getting a first round bye, Boise State and their head coach. I mean, even SMU, coaches are the starting point of how players can be good to become great. And if that follows into the professional level, they know that that head coach, even all the way back from high school and getting that head coach in college, is the one that is going to mold them to be that great player, that they can take this wonderful dream of being a football player, being a professional football player, to new heights. And it does come to coaching. Of course, there are other factors, a family, who you surround yourself with, morals, your values, but coaching in itself, whether it be sports or even in the workplace, you need that mentor to help you not just realize what you have in yourself, but what you can bring out for yourself as well.
Moving on, Avery. As you know, this Saturday, it was the anticipated Navy versus Army game, a classic rivalry. This was their 125th game between both teams. And like I said in my latest episode of Sports News Flash at 12, which you can guys subscribe to on YouTube, we tune in every year for this, but this year was a little bit different because both teams have been sensational all year long. Navy, they came into this game with a chip on their shoulder. They hated to see Army defeat Tulane for that championship. They wish they could have been in that position. They got tired of everyone underestimating them, saying that Army is aggressive, they're physical, et cetera, et cetera. Navy came into this game and shocked a lot of people. Not by them winning, but how they won. This was not even close. This was a domination. Navy's defense did a good job to slow down Army's offensive running game because that's their bread and butter. Bryson Daly, as great as he was all season long, finished sixth in voting for Heisman. He was a no-show in this game. He got absolutely picked up the par by the midshipmen's defense. And Blake Horvath, I mean, this was a different Blake Horvath that I completely different. And there was some concerns with durability. We saw what happened in the game against Tulane. He was not 100%. So we were worried about how he was going to perform this game. He did not look rusty at all. He did not look like he was injured. He had a total of four touchdowns. Two of them he threw, two of them he did it with his legs. But this was a great all-around performance by Navy. They defeated a ranked Army team for the first time since 1957, and this was their first one against Army since 2021. So great job by Navy, but hey, salute to Navy, Army, Air Force, all the servicemen and women that have sacrificed and fought for this country. And if you saw that pregame, that just, chills.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. This was a complete domination by Navy, but the reason a lot of us tune in to watch the Army Navy game is really, for like a lot of sports, we watch the pregame for it. And you're absolutely correct that pregame, all the analogies, chills, goosebumps, hairs lifted up, it was unworldly, if you will. But Navy coming out, Blake Harvath, just, I mean, he wanted to show that he was a premier quarterback. And not only that, he just excelled Navy. And you're absolutely correct. I think Navy had a chip on their shoulder. Army going into their conference championship, Navy had a shot, but and we've said it all year, these service schools, they have something that other programs do not. They do not have a transfer portal. These young men, they have to, for lack of a better term, kind of write their congressmen to detail how and why they would be a good fit at West Point, in Colorado at Air Force, at Annapolis for Navy. So these are young men who are going to serve our country. And before they do that, they have this desire to play a sport with a lot of physicality, with a lot of emotion. And not only did they do that, but they've done that both Army and Navy this year with a lot of class, a lot of excitement, and just the absolute joy of seeing that this is the future. These are future leaders of our country, and they're starting this on the football field. They are going to transition into the service, and what better way to know that our country is in good hands, watching these young men and how they are on the football field. And you're right, it was a complete domination by Navy, but it was a great game in there, and it's one, the 125th, but it's one that I think everyone, and not just the college football fan, I think everyone should tune into every year.
Amen, amen. And after the season, I'm definitely going to be more consistent to watch it every single year because I don't really get to watch it every year. But I'm telling you, Avery, this season, I am, well, I should say we are thankful, grateful that are witnessing one of the greatest seasons in college football history. And it's been a joy to even do this college football time with you and just watch these games and all these bowl games. It's a beautiful, beautiful time. if you're a college football fan, like the way we are. But moving on, and this particular guy, I'm becoming a fan of each and every day. And after watching the introductory press conference, it just continues to grow even more of my respect and admiration as a football fan. Charles Huff from Marshall, now new place, Southern Miss. That introductory press conference, that's the kind of confidence that coaches should have when they go to a new program. This is a man, for those of you who don't know, this is a man, he worked under Nick Saban before coming to a Marshall. He worked under Nick Saban. All right. It was a short time, but he learned a lot from the great one. We saw what he did with Marshall, especially in his fourth and final season, his best season with Marshall, and now he's carried that momentum to Southern Miss. And there was just a couple of things that stood out to me about that speech, Avery. And I'm gonna read a few of them here. And I quote, "It's time to go back to the top." He laid down the four steps. First step, the process, trust the process, core values, have a positive attitude. The second step, work ethic. The third one, compete in everything that they must do, whether it's in class, in the field. Also, are you doing enough to help the community? And the fourth step, what's going to separate this team from others? So I liked all of that. And I like the guarantee, the way he spoke in guarantee fashion when he said, and we will win. So I loved it. I love the press conference. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's some excitement that Charles Huff is going to bring to Southern Mississippi. But the interesting part is, and we kind of alluded to it last week, when you have coaches that leave a program, sometimes that may cause an exodus. We've seen it. When Deion Sanders left Jackson State, he built up that program. You had players follow him. But even though he leaving Jackson State, it still elevated the program. However, in this case, with Charles Huff leaving Marshall, it did cause a bit of a stir because you had a lot of players entering the transfer portal for it, which has now caused Marshall to opt out of their bowl game against Army. But Charles Huff going to Southern Mississippi in this program and those core values that he's going to bring. I think not only are you going to have the fan base, if they're not already excited, will be, and we've seen that a good time. Second, when you're under a coaching tree, and we've kind of seen that when it comes to college football, you know, the Bill Parcells, coaching tree or the Bill Belichick coaching tree now with Nick Saban and I'll use the term disciples, Charles Huff, Lane Kiffin, I can't think of a bunch offhand, Auburn's coach. They're all on the tip of my tongue. But when you have that foundation, when you have the work ethic that they are going to bring, you are going to have players also be excited, even if it's just a mediocre of excitement. Or like, okay, let's see how this goes. And then once practices start, and usually, and we saw it, usually it's going to start with the spring games, how that works, the excitement from the fan base, from the fans, from the school, from the students, then going into summer, and then working your way up to the start of the season. There's nothing wrong with being excited about a head coaching change and the excitement that it's going to bring to a program because like we've seen when we've seen new coaches come in, even though there can be a whole bunch of excitement, but what is going to be the result of the excitement, that's what makes it. But Charles Huff at Southern Miss, there's something very interesting about him coming to this program. Also found out he's just a tad bit younger than me. So I mean, if you're at an age where you can still relate to your players on a level that they trust you, those families trust you to coach your young men, to bring them to another level, to also remind them that they're still human beings. They're not machines. You can have emotions, you can show those emotions, you can have the intensity, and you can still bring that on and off the football field. It's something great to see. And I think Charles Huff and the Southern Mississippi program is gonna be in for something fantastic next season that we need to pay attention to.
And don't be surprised if some of the Marshall players follow him to Southern Miss. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And I think I read a little bit into that in an article. I need to look into that up more often. But I wouldn't be surprised because when a coach has that much of a big impact on a young man, you know, like I said, it is a great time um to be in college football when it comes to transfer portal because you don't know whose lives you're going to impact. And if you're going to somewhere new, you're going with that person along with the man. To a certain extent, I don't mind that because, I mean, hey, if it's for the better, if the person became better because of this human being, then hey, I'm all for it. So I wouldn't be surprised if that were to happen, and I wouldn't underestimate or count out Charles Huff whatsoever. This man is full of confidence, full of um strong attitude and willingness to commit to winning. And I mean, I'm really looking forward to see what he's gonna do with Southern Miss. Last but not least, Avery, the Big Ten 2025 schedule is officially released. There's three teams that I wrote down that have an interesting schedule. Michigan State Spartans, I'm looking forward to see what they're going to do next season. They have an interesting schedule, challenging but interesting. Penn State and Indiana Hoosiers. Michigan State, they have USC, Nebraska, UCLA, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State, Iowa, Maryland. I could say that starting from Indiana, those one, two, three, four, five, those there's like five, six consecutive games that they're gonna be tested. But hey, this is what it's all about. I mean, I feel like teams like Minnesota and Maryland, those are teams that on any given Saturday, they can give you a run for your money. And Iowa's gonna be competing, and obviously, Indiana, the Kirk Cignetti era. So that's an interesting schedule, but I'm looking forward to see what Michigan State will bring to the table next season.
You're right. I made a spreadsheet and can't kind of see it, but yeah, in this spreadsheet, when I did it from the Big Ten schedule, I also noted some kind of important games. And for Michigan State, you're absolutely right. I mean, important games for them, USC, UCLA, Penn State. But that like 6 week stretch is going to kind of show the grit of Michigan State. So if they start off strong that season, by the time they get to USC and they're tested, how is that going to work for that program and the Spartans? Indiana, knowing how they're in the college playoff right now, looking at next season, I have their important games as Iowa, Oregon, and Penn State. So again, how is this season going to carry over into next season with that program and how it's going to detail following the first year of the 12 team college playoff. Mentioning Maryland, I have
Mhm.
them on like a 3 week stretch. They play Nebraska, UCLA, and then Indiana. And aside from the UCLA game being played at UCLA, it's a good idea of how the Terrapins are going to react in that halfway. Because when those games are played, that's going to be the halfway point for their season. But when you said Penn State, I mean, literally, they play Oregon at the end of September. If they're not
Mhm.
already in good shape by the time they get to Oregon, they could have an interesting time later in the season, depending on that game. But then also, middle of October, they play at Iowa. And then at the beginning of November, they play Ohio State. Two interesting venues to play in. If anyone takes a look at the Big Ten schedule, if you look at the teams and who they're playing and when they're playing and where they're playing, you see a very interesting dichotomy of these schools and when it terms of when they're traveling, those interesting games. Just on a side note, Ohio State's going to open their season versus Texas.
That's a big bang right there. But
The Buckeyes are going to open their season against the Longhorns, and if that isn't saying something to try to start off the season on a good note, to try and see where you stand in, college football at that point, as far as what the preseason ranking is going to be at the time of the start of the season. I mean, it's this schedule is packed. This
yep,
schedule is packed with some really marquee games, especially what we know now and the teams that are in the playoff that, just missed it, teams that have won conference championships. But if we're starting as far as conference schedules, I have looked at SEC has released their schedule as well as Big 12.
yeah.
But
Those
this
are
one,
those we might talk about them this week.
okay, yeah, but just just from what I've seen and now, what we've seen from the Big Ten, all in all, Big Ten schedule, very exciting. Very,
Super exciting.
very exciting, especially what
Hmm.
we know now. And this could be even more exciting once the playoff games start Friday and Saturday, and then going into the bowl games. And then after the championship, we can look back at these schedules and say, wow, this game and this game is going to be interesting. But the Big Ten, I mean, they're not pulling any punches. They're not pulling any punches. If you are part of that conference, and we've kind of said it this year with teams who play, strength of schedule, margin of victory, we've always said that, especially now in the playoff where who you play is going to make a difference. This is a big deal. And Big Ten making that leap of the schedule can be interesting. Can be very interesting.
I agree with everything you said. I want to also say that Indiana versus Penn State is what I'm looking forward to. And also, in my opinion, this could be an underrated matchup, Indiana versus Purdue. Why? I'm looking forward to see what Purdue is gonna do. Barry Odom is the new head coach for that team, and what he did with UNLV was, top notch. So I'm looking forward to see what Purdue is gonna do next season. So I have that as an underrated matchup in Indiana's schedule, but I do like Indiana go up against Michigan State and Penn State, Ohio State versus Texas. Penn State and Ohio State always a must see. Penn State versus Oregon, of course. But Michigan State's and Indiana's schedule is something that I'm really gonna pay attention
Yeah.
to for next season.
And it's good you pointed out Purdue. While I was looking at it, I did take a look at Purdue's schedule too, and I agree with you. Purdue had some high expectations this year. And the reverse of that is the success of Indiana. So Purdue's schedule, and now they have a new head coach bringing in that program. How is that going to affect the school? Also, just the layout of Big Ten in and of itself is going to be a conference that has a lot of grit. You're probably going to see some really intense matchups, when you look at the schedule, because there's a lot of history with some of these schools, and also the introduction of new rivalries. Like we've always seen the Penn State Ohio State rivalry, or the Ohio State Michigan rivalry, and how it is. But underneath, we're probably going to see some new rivalries, with the invention of new teams, as well as schools going to play uh at different venues that they've probably, never been to before. But overall, the unveiling of the 2025 schedule for Big Ten has some excitement to work with, just as we've said all year, whether it be coaching changes, whether it be influx of players, whether it be, just the excitement of the college football playoff in general. What we know now and what is going to go into next season is just amazing to watch. And, are doing this for our third year. And, we've probably said this is probably the most excited we've been to this year. I can't wait for even next year. But before we do that, we are going to watch, this first season of a college football playoff, and how these teams are going to react, and how playing at home to get to a bowl game for a national title is going to work overall.